They are responsible of our common ethical base and understanding, and representative of the suffering and the needs of their own communities and people. And I do believe, as far as religious leaders would endorse, embodies those two missions and two responsibilities, interreligious dialogue and interfaith engagement can, I think, gain a new momentum. I would like to end by quoting Pope Leo. You know, at the end of his visit to Lebanon after Turkey, the very last words of his visit in his farewell message at the airport of Beirut, he said the following: "We must recognize that armed struggle brings no benefit. While weapons are lethal, negotiation, mediation, and dialogue are constructive. Let us all choose peace as a way and not just as a goal." And I think this is a call for all religious leaders now to be involved in those three areas: negotiation, mediation, and dialogue, but again, with the condition to embody at the same time their own community's needs and also their ethical and spiritual leadership and responsibility.
Thank you, Fadi. Ed, would you share that plea that there's an opportunity here now, but an urgency to be authentic?
Yes. There is an urgency, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called the fierce urgency of now. And I think we all face that, the urgency of the present moment. And that urgency isn't about securing uniformity. There's sometimes a temptation amongst religious leaders to believe that unity is uniformity. It's not. Unity is about allowing for diversity of opinions within communities and across communities. And one of the reasons why so many dialogue groups have collapsed in the last couple of years, certainly in the UK when we've looked at the reasons, is because there's been an attempt to agree on everything. It's not possible. To create a statement, for example, on Gaza has not been possible for so many groups, so they've collapsed. So to recognize that there are diverse views, there are contradictory views, there are fundamentally divergent views, does not mean you stop talking. Every conflict, every war has to end in a conversation. So the conversation needs to start now. And religious leaders have an absolutely vital role in that conversation. And also, something that we're not very good at is recognizing the extremism within our own communities. I find it much easier engaging in dialogue with other communities when I recognize the dirty laundry within my own. I'm taken more seriously, as are my colleagues. This willingness to be self-critical. Now, if I can't be self-critical 3,000 miles away in my ivory tower of Cambridge, how can I expect somebody in Gaza, or somebody in southern Israel, or somebody in Kashmir, in Pakistan, in India, wherever it is, to engage in dialogue, to recognize different positions if I'm unable to do that in the comfort of my home? So don't seek one voice, recognize that there are multiple voices. And also, just to add, where there are models of excellence. Yesterday we heard of those who attended the Grenada Declaration. It's one of the best statements I've read on Islamophobia, combating Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, produced by an array of people. Now, of course, we have to disseminate, we have to deliver, we have to implement, but there are these models. We should be supporting those models, whether they are local, whether they're in the region where the conflict is, particularly those examples of good practice, and encourage those rather than simply engage from the sidelines in a megaphone voice rather than the voice of dialogue.
Thank you, Ed. I wonder, Imam Omar, where you see this going. I mean, Ed talked about recognizing different voices, but goodness, it's not as if every religious leader in every country talks with a voice of peace. I mean, sometimes the voices of religious leaders can do the opposite of that. They can be agents of polarization, and they can be agents to support ethno-nationalist divide. So how to go forward? We've got this call now for point 18 and a call for an interfaith dialogue. What would you see as an authentic way forward from where you sit?
Yeah, so I think since we bring up, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., peace is the presence of justice, right? It's not the absence of violence. It's not the absence of war. It's not the absence of tension. It's the presence of justice. And my fear and my skepticism with so many of these dialogues is that they often suffocate calls for justice. and they, reinforce false framings that suggest that this was all just because Muslims and Jews just couldn't get along, and that's why you suddenly have an occupation and apartheid that's followed by a genocide and all sorts of tension that exists. You don't want to reinforce false framings, so you want to address issues head-on, authentically, I think as Peter mentioned, away from the halls of power, because we are not, as faith leaders, meant to be brokers of power. We're supposed to be examples of conscience, and we're supposed to call people to consistent values of conscience and dignity across the board. And that means that we're going to often find ourselves at odds with many of the interfaith initiatives that are being launched from the halls of power. We often talk about rescuing faith from bad actors, from extremist groups. I also think you need to rescue faith from government sometimes.